more showed up. None of the times I knocked and identified myself, I'd gotten a response. I could push on the door slightly and see that it wasn't locked on the latch, but that there was something barricading it, which was likely him keeping the door closed.
Okay, and all those attempts that you had made to talk to Paul, you said he didn't respond at all?
No, there was no response from the bathroom. I could tell that he was in there. We couldn't see with the mirror positioning where he was positioned up against the door. If you're looking at the door, the handle is here on the right. There's a more bathroom. Once you go in the door, over to the right as well, he was leaning up against the very left part of the door, so we were unable to open it.
So how many more officers were able to respond?
Several more at the time, and then as things continued, the rest of shift 3 and 4 showed up, just due to how the call was kind of evolving at that.
What did you do next?
We made a plan to get the shield, just for protection for the first person. All the meanwhile, trying to knock and get him to come out. We were sitting a little farther back from the door just due to the threat of him saying that he would stab us, and him known to carry knives and hammers. So we were verbally saying it through there. We kind of lined up at that point, giving him a couple last chance to come out with his hands up, before we ultimately decided to kick the door. Corporal Moore had the shield. Officer Hamilton was there at that time, and I was next to him. Gave one last warning that we were going to kick the door if he didn't come out. He had made some response of he couldn't come out. So we ultimately, Corporal Moore had kicked a hole into the door, got a very flimsy interior door, so we just kicked a basketball-sized hole in approximately the middle of it, where you could see Paul laying on the ground. He was facing over his right shoulder, and as soon as that hole was kicked into the door, he had a knife in his hand and began stabbing through the hole towards officers. At the door, we asked him that he needed to stand up, open the door, and exit the bathroom with his hands up and empty. We gave that command several times, and he continued to say that he was stuck. He couldn't clarify on what, but it appeared that he wasn't stuck on anything. He was just laying on the ground next to the door.
What did you guys do next? Or what did you do next, I should say, right?
Continue to give commands. We need to see your hands. If you come out of the bar, or out of the bathroom, excuse me, with a knife, you're going to get tased, or you're going to get shot. You need to exit with your hands up, and you need to do it. You need to do it now. We've kind of crossed the threshold at that point where we needed him to get out of the bathroom, so everybody's safety was there. He continued to say that he couldn't, and then at one point before he exited the bathroom, he asked for a nurse. In our safety and the nurse's safety, as soon as it's safe to do so, we will take that person up to St. Peter's to meet with the nurse, or have medical come down once the scene is safe.
So you mentioned the taser. Do you still have it pointed at Paul, and is this through the basketball-sized hole in the door?
Yes.
Okay. What happened next?
Continued to give him commands that he needed to exit with his hands up. He said that he would open the door. Corporal Moore was standing in the corner by the exit door in the back hallway facing towards the bathroom. And two officers, Officer Lashinsky and Erickson, made their way behind Corporal Moore, who had the shield, to give him cover. And then I was next to him, to Corporal Moore's right, facing towards the bathroom door. At that point, Paul had stood up, opened the door, and we began to give him commands that he needed to exit the bathroom with his hands up and open so we could detain him at that point. The plan was, as this was evolving, was once he crossed the threshold of the door, the very opening of the door, once he did that, the officers would grab him and handcuff him. We asked him several times to step out of the bathroom. At one point, he had taken a couple steps forward and was close to exiting the bathroom, but he ultimately retreated backwards.
Did he have anything in his hands when he opened the door?
He did not. At that point, we didn't know exactly where the knife was.
Okay. You still have your taser on him?
Yes.
At that time, do you remember, did the other officers have weapons drawn, or?
Yes.
Okay.
The two officers that went behind Corporal Moore were providing lethal coverage with their firearms, and I had less lethal with the taser. Did have Corporal Moore. He had the best view, and him and I had been there the whole time. He took over the kind of talking and the commands, just since he had the view of it, and with scenarios like that, it's much easier to have one person talk than have 3 or 4 officers saying and asking things. But he could solely take over that, to have one voice to communicate with Paul. He gave him clear instructions that he needed to exit the bathroom, that we couldn't provide him a nurse until he was out and safe. He had mentioned at one point that he was suicidal, and then later recanted that statement, saying that he was no longer suicidal. This went on for approximately 2 minutes, back and forth of, oh, you need to step out. If you come at us with a knife, you will be tasered, you will be shot. Ultimately, Corporal Moore said, this is your last warning. Upon that statement, Paul went back into the bathroom. I don't know at that point where the knife was, but he had retrieved it.
Out of your view at that
Out
point?
of my view, yeah. So he had taken a step back into the bathroom where he couldn't be seen. So my job at that point was to use the less lethal. The plan was if it locked him up, meaning that he was no longer able to walk and come at officers due to being tased, that people would go in and detain him in handcuffs. I stepped into the beginning entryway of the bathroom and shot my taser once. It appeared that Paul had kind of swiped down at the taser. There's 2 prongs. The ultimate goal of the taser is to hit the upper body as well as the lower body, which is when you see the lockup and people tighten up, and that's when the other officers will go in and grab him. By swiping at the lines, you can knock them out and not have the considered effect of the lockup. So I saw that was ineffective, so I shot my second round, which was also ineffective. So I stepped back. Corporal Moore went in. He was going to be the first officer to grab Paul and handcuff him, which is when he had the knife in his hand. And they kind of met at the entrance of the door, and he stabbed down and stabbed Corporal Moore in the clavicle.
You saw that?
I could see the knife. I hadn't seen it where it hit till after everything happened, and it looked like he had swiped again after that, made 2 attempts with that, and then that's when the shots went off, and he started moving back into the back corner of the bathroom that we couldn't see.